Dun 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 dun. Little pig, let me in.
Negan Smith, one of the most iconic characters from The Walking Dead, one of the most fan-favorite characters of The Walking Dead, my personal favorite character, and also one of the most controversial Walking Dead characters. His character development and his character arc in The Walking Dead is one of the best, if not the best, in the whole show, and including the comics. So today's video, I'll be going over Negan's character development, his journey, and his growth as a character, so please stay tuned. And now, before we actually get into the video, I'd like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate it. This growth and just everything that this channel has become is all because of you guys. And I just want to take a moment and say thank you to all of you. And now we do have a goal in mind for 5,000 subscribers. So if you guys want to be part of that journey to 5,000 subscribers, please like, share, and subscribe. And enjoy this video that I made about Negan's character development in The Walking Dead and how he's one of the best characters in The Walking Dead, so please stay tuned. Now let's start from the beginning of Negan's story in The Walking Dead, and that is when he was a normal person before the apocalypse ever started. He was a high school gym teacher who really did enjoy his job, and he was a very easygoing gym teacher. But all of that changed when he actually got into a bar fight with a man who was acting annoying and talking loud while Negan was trying to enjoy his favorite song with his wife. Negan got into a nasty bar fight with that man, and he actually beat him, and he almost killed him with the amount that he beat him. And then later on, he found out that that man was actually the father of one of the children he actually teaches in his high school, which actually caused Negan to get fired, and also the medical bills and just the whole lawsuit in general was a burden on his wife Lucille, and she was the one that was actually running the things. Negan became into a jobless man, just staying at home playing video games, and he's on parole, and he has to visit a parole officer every other week. But then his wife Lucille actually did find out she had cancer, and she also did find out that Negan was cheating on her with her best friend. Now, from here, we skip forward to when the apocalypse actually did start, and Lucille's cancer condition got way worse. And we see here that Negan is showing remorse. He wants to, make up for all the bad things he's done. He wants to make up for cheating on his wife. So, he does end up taking care of her. And also he's actually helping out with her treatment even in the apocalypse. He's trying his best to make her happy. But then that was until Lucille's chemotherapy actually did run out, and that was because the generator lost power. So then Negan, he actually had to go out and he had to actually track down this doctor to actually get Lucille's chemotherapy. He goes out on his journey to actually go find her chemotherapy, but he comes across Laura and Dr. Franklin. Now these two actually do end up helping out Negan. They do give him some food and some supplies, and also on top of that, they actually give him Lucille's chemotherapy. Now Laura here, she actually does hit Negan with a bat, and that bat does end up turning into Lucille, and we do get a backstory on that. This is the backstory of Negan's bat. And then Negan actually does get caught by a biker gang named the Valix Vipers, and these guys actually do end up kidnapping Negan and interrogating him about the location of Dr. Franklin and Laura, and that's because of the supplies and the medications and all that, and they just want to rob them. But Negan actually did make a promise to Dr. Franklin earlier that he would not give the information to anyone else, and he would actually keep their secret safe. But when they actually do start threatening Negan by actually showing him Lucille's chemotherapy, and they actually do threaten to spill it in the toilet. Now this actually does cause Negan to actually give them the location of the doctor, and when they actually do find him, they actually do let Negan go. But then when Negan actually does make it back home with Lucille's chemotherapy, he does find out that Lucille did end her own life, and she actually did think that Negan left and he's not going to come back, which actually does cause something to snap in Negan's head, and basically he does turn into the Negan that we all know. Now Negan actually does end up burning his own house with Lucille's walker body in it, and then he goes and he actually does wrap the barbed wire around Lucille, the bat Lucille that we all know, and that what Negan is very iconic for. Then Negan actually does go back to the bar where the Valak's Vipers are, and they're actually interrogating Dr. Franklin. Now this is where Negan turns into Negan. Like, this is where he actually does get his first kills. He does kill them one by one, and he does get a hold of the leader named Craven. And now when Craven is tied up by Negan actually does end up telling him the story how he got into a bar fight with a man who actually did have a kid in his high school. Now Negan is talking, and this is where we do see Negan becoming into Negan, the Negan that we know in season 7 and season 8, and of course he does kill Craven by the end of it. And now Negan does specify something very interesting in this scene, and he does say that I see red whenever I get mad, and of course that causes him to lose control. And that does explain a lot of the stuff that Negan does as a savior, as the leader of the saviors. It's because, like, you know, whenever he gets very mad, he sees red and he loses control. But there are moments in, like, season 7, season 8, where Negan is just completely calm, he's completely cool, and he does the horrific things that he does. But then we do see scenes where he actually does get very mad, and it does look like that he's seeing red. And now Negan's early life as a savior, or like the leader of the saviors, is unknown, and they did not show it all that much, they didn't explain it all that much. But with the little information we have, we know that Negan and Simon actually did end up working together, and they actually were able to take over the saviors. The saviors was a group before, but then, like, Negan described it as a bunch of animals without rules, so then he actually did end up taking advantage of that, and he ended up taking over the saviors and becoming their new leader. And now in Dead City, we actually do see a little bit of the early days of the saviors, and of course Negan being the leader pretty early on. And we do see that both of Negan's high-ranking men are the Croat and Simon. And now, of course, here we do see that Negan is a good leader, and he doesn't want to actually kill much people, and that actually does prove when the Croat actually does kill a girl from the kingdom as like interrogation tactics. And Negan, we could see here that Negan did say, he did state clearly that he shouldn't kill anyone, and they don't work like that, especially kids. But the court actually went on and he did so, and this does show that, you know, Negan, even as the leader of the saviors, even as, like, you know, like being seen as this ruthless guy, he still does have morals, and we do see that in The Walking Dead season 7, 8, and also in the later on seasons. Now, throughout the years of being the leader of the saviors, Negan actually did come up with a system with the Hilltop and the Kingdom where he would take half their stuff, and this is all through intimidation tactics. And Negan actually did make them agree to these terms because he came up with a system where he would actually line up members of these communities and he'd bash one of their heads in to intimidate the others into making them do whatever he wants and to actually comply with these terms. But the common misconception here is that Negan himself has been doing all of this. That is totally wrong. It's because Negan has always kept his identity secret from the other communities, and, you know, like we actually do see when Jesus is explaining to Rick and the group who Negan is, he doesn't even know who Negan himself is because, like, all of the other saviors, they call themselves Negan, and they don't know who the real Negan is because he just doesn't want to come up in front, and he kind of does everything from behind the shadows from up until that point. But we do know that Negan has a big amount of numbers. Like, there are a lot of saviors in his group, and even Jesus doesn't know like how many members are there because they always come for offerings, and it's usually Simon who comes to the Hilltop. And also the other common misconception here is that Negan did bash the head in of a 16-year-old boy in the Hilltop, and that is totally wrong as well because Jesus actually did specify that it wasn't Negan, it was somebody that was coming on behalf of Negan. Now, we don't know if this is Simon or if this is the Croat, but, you know, my bets here is that this is the Croat because he actually did enjoy doing that sort of thing, and we did see him actually killing a girl in Dead City back in the flashback when he was a savior. Or it could be Simon as well because we do know that Simon did kill a kid a couple of times, and Negan is still very disappointed about that.
All right. We got a full boat. Let's meet the man.
Pissing our pants yet?
And now let's get into one of the best debuts in TV history, and that's Negan's first appearance in The Walking Dead. And they did this so well. It's because like the saviors were keep on cornering Rick and the group, and then we actually got a full realization of the scale of the saviors, and then Negan finally appears and he lines everybody up. That's where Negan proved to Rick that him and his group have been overconfident by killing the saviors in the outposts, and now he's gonna make them pay. And now here we do see prime Negan. This is the Negan that's very popular. This is the Negan that everybody loves or everybody hates, you know, it depends on how you look at it. And Negan in his first appearance is seen as a big villain. He seems to be like a psychopath more than the governor, but well, later on we do see that Negan is much more dynamic and his character is much more in depth than we thought. Now here in season 6, the last episode, Last Day on Earth, we see that Negan actually does end up cornering the group and he puts them in a line. And Negan, after seeing what Rick and the group could do, he actually does take initiative and he comes himself to actually prove the point and prove the message, which he does very well by killing Glenn and Abraham. And while he's doing so, he's taunting them and he's laughing while doing everything. And we do see here, if you do compare to like Negan in the past, when Negan was a normal man, compared to like the Dead City flashback, and to now, we see that Negan's character has changed a lot. And Negan has become heartless to the point, right, where he kills people without any thought and he taunts them about it, which is kind of horrific to see. I mean, the first time I've seen this episode, it was very horrific, but I knew that, you know, Negan was going to become a very, very good character later on. And now after killing Glenn and Abraham, Rick is still not budging and Negan is still trying to break Rick down, and this is where Negan actually does take Rick on an RV ride and he lets him know that you belong to me and you can't do anything about it at this point, and he threatens the rest of the group as well, but Rick is still not letting down. He's still not giving up. That's where Negan actually threatens Rick by telling him to chop Carl's arm off or else he will kill the rest of the group. And this is the moment where Rick Grimes actually breaks down, and it's just very surprising to see that Negan is the only character to actually do that. He's the only one to actually drive Rick to that point where he has him by the neck and Rick can't do anything about it. And this shows that Negan is the biggest threat that Rick has actually faced so far. And it's just insane seeing, like, you know, the scare tactics that Negan has actually developed as the leader of the Saviors, and he has a way to actually convince people to do what he likes, whether they like it or not. And now throughout season 7, Negan has been shown to be a big problem for the group, and of course he's taken over Alexandria, he's taken Daryl as a prisoner, and he comes for offerings from Rick and Alexandria as a forced agreement upon Rick that Alexandria should give the Saviors half of their supplies and their stuff, and Negan comes himself for that. And now Negan, whenever he does come for his offerings, he does leave a big mark on the group. For example, he killed Spencer, and also Olivia died because of him, and on top of that he took Eugene hostage. And now throughout season 7, Rick and the group have basically given up. Rick basically says that Negan is in charge now, and it just really did break Rick from the inside, and we've never seen Rick Grimes ever be in this stage, and Negan was the character to do so. And now throughout season 7, we do see how Negan runs the Saviors, and he has a lot of morals and rules to it, even though he is ruthless and he's seen as kind of a psychopath. We do see in depth that how does Negan actually run the Saviors. He has a lot of rules in place, and we see quite a bit that Negan does not hesitate when it actually comes to the rules. He doesn't hesitate killing his own men because he wants to keep order in the Saviors and he wants to keep control. But we do see that Negan actually does reward his men for good work, and he keeps his men that are in a higher rank and a higher position in good states, right? You know, they get good food, they get good living conditions and everything like that. And also he does reward the workers that are actually working for him, which actually does show that, you know, like, in order to keep control, in order to keep the rules stable, you gotta reward, like, you know, your men. You gotta show some leeway here and there. And now when Carl actually does infiltrate the Savior's base, we do see another side of Negan, and that is a fairly good side of the character. And the way that he treats Carl is like nothing we've seen before when it comes to Negan. And of course, because Carl is a kid and Negan does respect Carl for being so tough in the apocalypse, and also he does feel bad for, of course, his eye, Negan actually does end up treating Carl good, and he does safely return him back to Alexandria. And now, of course, we get that whole scene of, you know, Negan actually exploring Alexandria and their house. And, of course, he does make Carl spaghetti. And it just shows that, you know, Negan does have another side to him, which he actually does care about people. And, of course, he does end up respecting Carl and caring for Carl as well. And now in the finale of Season 7, where Rick and the group actually do end up, you know, fighting against Negan, and Negan actually does come to Alexandria, and Jadis is working with Negan on the inside, we do see here that Negan is able to corner Rick and the group again. And there is a scene in this episode where Negan is about to kill Carl, and this is a point I want to make here, is that of course Negan has his morals, and he doesn't like killing children. He's strongly against that, which was established before. And so a lot of people are confused, why was he about to kill Carl? And that is a point I want to make here, is that Negan probably saw red there. And of course, if you guys remember in Negan's back, and also in the start of this video, where I did mention that Negan did say that he does see red and he doesn't know what he's doing, this scene he probably saw that. He probably got very frustrated that Rick is not backing down and they're actually standing up against him. That's where Negan saw red, and he didn't know what he was doing until, like, he was about to strike Carl. Then of course Shiva came, and Ezekiel and the rest of the kingdom, and they were able to actually fend Negan and the Saviors off. And now the question here is that, would Negan have killed Carl? That is very hard to actually say. It's because Negan was about to take a full-on swing there, and it did look like that he was going to kill Carl, but in my opinion, I don't think that Negan would have killed the child. And of course, because the circumstances were there, and like Ezekiel came on time, it's still hard to say, but I think he would have redirected the swing at Rick. If anything, I'm not too sure, because of course later on in Season 8, Negan actually does state a few times that, you know, Carl had a lot of potential, he cared for Carl and stuff like that. And so yeah, it's very hard to say that, but you know, we could just chalk it up to like Negan just lost control in just a fit of rage. Now in Season 8 of The Walking Dead, All Out War, we do see that the communities end up fighting up against Negan and the Saviors, and it's basically the Saviors versus the Hilltop, Kingdom, and Alexandria, led by Rick. And now here we do see that Negan is struggling for power. He's trying everything to actually keep his power and to keep his position. But there are a few moments in this season where we do see a different side to Negan, like how we did when he was with Carl. And one of the moments where we do see Negan being a totally different man is when Carl is actually trying to talk Negan out of, you know, blowing up Alexandria, and Carl actually does get Negan to talk to him, and we see here that Negan might be able to budge. Carl might be able to convince Negan, and then Carl does escape. But we do see in this moment here that Negan and Carl are having a heart-to-heart talk. Even Negan does say that as well, that, you know, I thought we were having a moment. So this does show that Negan is willing to change. He's willing to listen to somebody, and just by the fact that he was able to listen to Carl and he was able to talk to Carl, and we do see a change in his eyes, right? We do see a change in Negan's emotions, and it does seem like that he was gonna, you know, just stop with the whole firing of Alexandria. And the other point I wanted to make was when Carl actually did die and Rick told him the news. And now we do see that Negan actually does start crying a bit. He feels very sorry, he feels very bad, and he actually does say to Rick, I'm sorry for your loss. And Negan sees it in a different way, where Rick was all caught up in the war against Negan that he forgot about Carl and he failed as a father. And that's how Negan sees it. Negan sees it as that Rick, instead of caring about his own kid, he was way too caught up in fighting up against him and fighting up against the saviors, that Carl ended up dying. And we do see here that Negan feels really bad about that, and even he wishes that Carl actually did survive. And now another integral moment of Negan's character during season 8 is when he actually talks to Gabriel in the RV. And now in this moment here, Gabriel does ask Negan to confess. He does ask Negan to confess his feelings and just why does he do the things that he does. And Negan actually does end up confessing to Gabriel, right? Negan does lose his guard and he's just confessing everything to Gabriel that about his wife Lucille and how he screwed around on her and how he just wasn't a good husband, but she was a good wife at the end of the day. Even he did tell Gabriel that Lucille had cancer and that she died during the apocalypse. And Negan does confess to Gabriel that he did not have it in him to actually put Lucille down. And he does say here that he was weak that way. That's where he was weak, and that is what he had to confess. So this does give Negan much more depth as a character, right? It shows that Negan wasn't always like this. He was a much different man, of course, and in the start of the apocalypse, compared to Rick, where Rick actually had it in him to put like Sophia down and Shane down. He had it in him in the start of the apocalypse to actually put some people down, whereas Negan, he could not put Lucille down. And that is one point I wanted to make. If you compare Negan and Carl specifically, I know a lot of people actually compare Rick and Negan, but if you compare Negan and Carl, whereas Carl, he had the guts to actually put his mother down, he had the guts to put Lori down, he had it in him to do that, but it changed him drastically and made him more ruthless. But because of Rick and just the whole group being around him, he was able to change back and he was able to actually turn out being a good person. Whereas Negan, he could not put Lucille down. Instead, he just burnt down the house, and Lucille is still probably a walker at their old house, just as a burnt walker or something like that. So this does show that Negan, he's trying not to be weak anymore, and he wants to make himself stronger. But throughout season 8 and also some of season 7, we do see a softer side to Negan, a side where Negan could actually change, where we did not see that with any other villain, right? We didn't see that with the governor especially, whereas the governor did have an arc like that where it did seem like he was gonna turn good, but he didn't have it in him. He wasn't a good person at heart. Even with everything that Negan has done throughout season 7 and 8, he still has it in him to actually turn into a better person and to turn into a better man. And now another critical moment in season 8, which is a big part of Negan's character, is when Jadis actually did kidnap Negan and she was about to trade him off to the CRM. And then here we actually do see that Simon, he went against orders and rules, where Negan told Simon to actually just kill one of the scavengers and not all of them. Simon went against the rules and he killed all of them, right? He did not kill only one, he killed all of them except for Jadis. And over here we do see a more compassionate side of Negan, and he understands what Jadis has lost, right? And she lost all of her family and just the people that she really did rely on. And Negan does promise Jadis that he's going to make everything right. And also he does get a little bit emotional in front of Jadis, where he does tell her that the bat, Lucille, does mean a lot to her, because after his wife died, this bat was the only thing he had, and he understands everything. And that's where Jadis actually does let Negan go. And then Negan goes back to the sanctuary and he ends up killing Simon, because again, Simon has done a lot of horrible things as a savior, and basically that was the last straw. He went against the rules, he went against Negan's orders, and he ended up just killing a whole community. And now let's fast forward to the finale of season 8. And over here is Negan and Rick's final battle. This is the battle that determines who is victorious, and of course Rick does win at the end of the day, but Rick actually does get Negan to listen to him because of Carl, right? And Rick does explain Carl's dream to Negan, and Of course, Negan does give Rick the time to actually explain in honor of Carl, and this shows that Negan was close to Carl, and Rick does explain, Carl's note and Carl's message before he died. And at first he's not actually agreeing with Rick, and he's saying that no, that's not going to work out, but Rick does say that Carl thought it was going to work, and that got Negan emotional. That is the moment where Negan broke. That is where Negan became a person again. That's where he got his heart back again because of Carl, and that is the moment where Negan actually does start crying for Carl. That's the part we see Negan break. That is the part we see Negan change, right? And of course Rick slits his throat there, taking advantage of the moment. But we could see from season 8 and this finale, of course, with Carl's letter and Negan trying to change and just his mentality changing here and there in sake of Carl, and also him crying for Carl, it shows that Negan did respect Carl. Negan does respect his wishes, and he actually truly cared for Carl, which of course shows that Negan has it in him to change, and that is the moment where we saw Negan change, when he started crying for Carl's death. And now in season 9 of The Walking Dead, Negan is imprisoned at Alexandria, and he's actually imprisoned in the same prison that Morgan made to actually, have another chance and to not kill someone for once, and, just to put them in a prison. And Negan was the person that is actually in that jail. And Negan actually does spend quite a bit in the prison, and in season 9 of The Walking Dead, Negan and Rick, they have a few talks here and there, and Rick actually tells Negan how the bridge is going to unite all the communities, and he does try to prove a point to Negan that Negan's ways are over, that's all in the past, and they could actually create a new future which all of them could work together. And of course Negan, he sort of taunts Rick, and he says to him that he's not saving the world, but he's just getting it ready for him. And we also get this intense moment in season 9 of The Walking Dead where Maggie and Daryl actually come to kill Negan, and Maggie and Daryl have been planning to do this for quite a while now, and they were just waiting for the right moment where Rick isn't at Alexandria. And when Maggie actually comes to kill Negan as revenge for killing Glenn, Negan actually taunts Maggie, and he wants Maggie to kill him. And he's basically begging at this point for Maggie to kill him because he just doesn't want to live in this world. We actually see Negan fully break down. We see him crying, and we see Negan at the lowest point he's ever been, and he just really wants Maggie to take that swing. Even he does taunt Maggie about how Glenn looked when he actually did kill him and how he enjoyed killing him. He was just trying to get Maggie fired up to actually kill him, but when he actually says that he wants to die and he wants to be with his wife, that's where Maggie actually spares Negan as sort of a way to punish him, that he has to live in this world. He's basically forced to live in this world, and he won't be able to die and actually, rest in peace. And after the time jump, when Rick actually does leave the show, we see Negan in a much better condition, right? He has a trimmed beard, and also, his head is shaved, and it seems like that he has a really good relationship with Judith. And here we do see another side to Negan, like how we did when he was with Carl, and Negan kind of treats Judith as a daughter, right? Negan really does care for Judith, and in my opinion, he's probably the only person other than Daryl that really, really does care for Judith, other than Michonne, of course. And we get a lot of moments where Negan is really treating Judith right. He's trying to keep her company, and he's trying to just talk to her, and he's teaching her math and stuff like that. He's teaching her life lessons, and we see this other side of Negan where it does look like he truly changed, right? He truly changed for the better, and of course Carl's wish and also Rick's whole mentality was right? People could change, even people like Negan, and he's a better man, right? Even though nobody trusts him, right? And we get a moment where Michonne does tell Judith to not talk to Negan and stuff like that, but Judith says that he's not that bad. He's actually pretty nice, and he's cool, and he talks to her and he gives her attention. And Judith is the only person that actually sees Negan this way. Nobody else trusts him, nobody else even likes him, and Judith is the only one that actually does care for Negan. And now when Negan actually does end up escaping Alexandria in season 9, we see that Negan actually makes his way to Michonne's house, and a lot of people might have thought that he went to go kill Michonne, and Negan did have a full opportunity to do so because she was asleep and she was just out in the open. And also kind of does mirror the scene when Rick and the others actually went to the Savior's outposts and they killed them in their sleep. It kind of reminded me of that scene right there. And so Negan did have a full opportunity to kill Michonne, but he chose not to. He just took Judith's compass and he left. And this does show that, Negan doesn't want to kill anyone anymore. He doesn't believe in that anymore. And even though he doesn't admit it, Rick's message and Rick's morals really did rub off on him, and he does believe the same thing that Rick does now, that everyone could actually live in a safer world. Even though he doesn't fully agree with that mentality, we do see that him staying in the cell in Alexandria really did change him for the better. Then when Judith actually does catch Negan trying to escape, she does actually point a gun at him, and of course Negan knows that Judith is not going to shoot him. He knows Judith way too well because he is one of the people that really did have heart-to-heart talks with Judith, and they spent a lot of time together even though he was in a cell. And Judith was just like sitting out the steps and she was talking to Negan. They did spend enough time together, they did have enough conversations that they do trust each other. And now when Negan actually does escape, Judith does tell Negan that there's nothing out there for him and he should go back into his cell. He should stay at Alexandria. Even Judith doesn't want him to leave. Then when Negan actually does get out into the world, he goes back to the sanctuary and he just looks at what is the sanctuary now. And the sanctuary being in ruins really does kind of affect Negan, right? He wants to be in that leadership position again. He wants to, feel his old self again, but he's just not able to do that because the sanctuary is not what it was before. It's all run down, and also there are walkers everywhere and stuff like that. So Negan does end up coming back to Alexandria, and he does admit to Judith that there is nothing out there for him, and he's willing to go back into his cell at Alexandria. And now one huge moment of season 9, which I personally think redeemed Negan, is when he saved Judith in the snowstorm. And in this moment here, Judith actually does end up, breaking away from the group, and it's just a blizzard. No one could see anything. Where Negan, he actually does take initiative. He actually ends up injuring his leg in the process, and he saves Judith and Dog. And here we do see that Negan has a much more compassionate side to him. He's selfless now, right? Negan is a much more selfless person now, and he really does truly care about Judith, and he's going out of his way to even put his own life in risk where no one else really did that in that moment. Negan is the one that took initiative at that moment, and he's the one that went and he saved Judith's life. And in my opinion, this is the moment where Negan is redeemed, right? This is the moment where Negan is fully redeemed. I don't know if it's just my bias speaking because he's my favorite character, but where people say that Negan is not redeemed yet, it just doesn't make sense to me because this moment here does show that he is redeemed. He's a redeemed character, he's a redeemed man, and he's really trying to fit in Alexandria. He's trying to do everything that he could to actually have everyone else look at him in a better light. And now in season 10 of The Walking Dead, in my opinion, this is Negan's season, right? Negan really did shine in this season, and he basically carried this season of The Walking Dead. And in this season, Negan actually has a good relationship with Lydia, who is the daughter of Alpha, the leader of the Whisperers, and she is going through a really tough time in Alexandria because they actually did take her, and Daryl and the rest, they did take her in Alexandria as a way to actually hide from her mother and to give her basically a better life. And over here we see that Negan is standing up for Lydia. She's getting bullied a lot by the other members of Alexandria because she is a Whisperer, right? And Negan is trying his best to actually make her deal with the situation in a non-violent way, and he's really trying to guide her around and just telling her that violence isn't the answer, and she could actually conquer them with her words and also her actions. And when Lydia actually does get cornered at nighttime and she's about to get basically killed by the other members of Alexandria, Negan does step in and he does save her. But in this moment right here, he accidentally kills Margot, and she was part of the group that was actually, you know, bullying Lydia, and she was one of the people that actually did want to kill her. Then when Negan actually does accidentally kill her by pushing her off of Lydia, the rest of the members of Alexandria, they do accuse Negan of murder, and they say that he's not trustworthy and they should execute him. And now the council, including Gabriel, Aaron, Michonne, and the rest, they do actually like have a vote, and like, you know, half of them are saying they shouldn't kill Negan, the other half are saying that they should kill Negan. And it's just a messy situation, and Negan knows that if he stays in Alexandria for a bit longer, he's gonna die, right? Because even if the council do decide against killing Negan, somebody else is gonna kill Negan inside Alexandria, and this is where Carol steps in. And now Carol actually does end up breaking out Negan, and as a promise of killing Alpha, right? Because Negan is basically the only person that could do it, right? Negan is the person that could actually infiltrate the Whisperers, and he could get his way like in there, and he could gain Alpha's trust and actually kill her. And that is a promise that Negan actually did make to Carol, and Carol actually wants revenge on Alpha for killing Henry. And then when Negan actually does escape, everyone is just furious, right? They're like, Negan escaped, and it's just dangerous to have Negan out there around, because again, they still don't trust him, and they still think that he's a murderer, he's a killer, even though Lydia does, you know, try to tell Daryl and the rest that Negan didn't do it, he didn't mean to do it, and he's not like that, and she doesn't want to see him die. Now, when Carol actually does break out Negan from Alexandria, Negan does go and he's trying to look for the Whisperers, where he does come across Brandon. And Brandon here actually does idolize Negan for what he used to be, right? Like the leader of the Saviors, and he says stuff that are not true, such as him shooting Carl. And Negan, we actually do see a look in his eyes like of rage and just sadness that I would never do that to Carl, right? And whatever you're hearing is not true. Then Brandon actually does give Negan a bat wrapped around with barbed wire. This is not Lucille, right? Lucille is buried somewhere else, but this is basically a homemade Lucille. And also he does give Negan a leather jacket, basically making him feel like a leader, basically, you know, giving him that feeling of what he used to have, right? Of being the leader of the Saviors, and also just being Negan. Now, when Negan and Brandon actually do come across a kid with his mother, Negan actually tries to help them out, even though Brandon is saying that we should rob them and we should kill them and stuff like that. Negan is fully against that. He's saying that we should help them, and he's just talking with the child and stuff like that. He's giving him like lessons and stuff like that. Then when Negan actually does go to get firewood to actually make food, he finds out that Brandon actually did end up killing the mother and child, and this enrages Negan, right? And like Brandon does scream out, "I am Negan," like how his saviors used to do, and then Negan just ends up killing Brandon right there, right? That is the amount of fury that Negan has for Brandon for doing this. And this does show that even though Negan was a ruthless savior, he did not harm women and children. We did see that multiple times in season 7 and season 8, and this does carry over to here, that where Negan still has that mentality that women and children should not be touched and they should not be killed. And with Brandon doing that, that basically even goes against his morals as a savior, that, like, you know, this is completely wrong, right? And yeah, he does end up killing Brandon for that. And now when Negan actually does infiltrate the Whisperers, in my opinion, this is the best part of the season, right? Because Negan truly does shine in the season. Like, you know, just Jeffrey Dean Morgan's acting and just his jokes were just amazing. And now at first, Beta does not trust Negan, and of course he's the only one that doesn't trust Negan because he came from Alexandria, whereas Negan does say that, you know, I don't like them, I want to kill them also, and they kept me prisoned up. And Negan does everything to actually gain their trust, right? He helps them hunt, he helps them cook food and stuff like that, where he actually does get the attention of Alpha. And how he gets the attention of Alpha is when Beta actually does throw Negan in front of a bunch of walkers. Negan does end up killing all of those walkers, and it does seem like he's cornered and he's surrounded, but he ends up doing it. And where a lot of people don't understand is that Negan actually is very strong, right? He has the capabilities of Rick and Daryl, where he was cornered, he was alone by a bunch of walkers, and he actually did end up killing them. Now, when Negan actually does get the attention of Alpha, he actually basically rises up the ranks and he basically becomes into her commander. And now after the Whispers actually take down the hilltop, we see Negan actually kidnapping Lydia, and here Lydia actually thinks that, you know, Negan's gonna give her to her mother and stuff like that. And he goes to Alpha and he tells her that I have Lydia, so come and see for yourself. And when Negan actually does take Alpha to the cabin, it's not the same cabin, and he basically uses that as bait, and he takes that opportunity to actually kill Alpha by decapitating her. Then he gives Alpha's head to Carol, and over here we do find out that Carol hired Negan to go and infiltrate the Whispers and to basically kill Alpha as revenge. Then Negan actually does tell Carol that, you know, now, you know, I did your work for you, now you have to give me something in return, and, you know, take me to Alexandria and put in a good word for me, because that was the agreement there, where Carol actually does say that it took him long, but Negan actually does argue back, and he says that, you know, like, this stuff takes time, right? You know, like, of course, infiltrating the Whispers and people as dangerous as them, it does take time, or else Negan would have been killed himself. Now, Negan and Daryl actually do cross paths after this, when Negan actually goes to the cabin where he put Lydia, and then Lydia's not there. Then Negan tries to actually, you know, tell his story to Daryl, and he tries to convince Daryl that he's the one that killed Alpha, and he should be trusted. But of course, Daryl is not accepting that. Daryl does not trust Negan one bit, and he still thinks that Negan is like his old self. But in my opinion, Negan killing Alpha fully does redeem him, and if you all don't think that Negan was redeemed before this, this should convince everyone that Negan has been redeemed, because he took a big step, right? He risked his own life to actually kill a big threat to Alexandria and the rest of the group. And now we actually get this very cool scene of Negan and Daryl actually working together, and this is when 3 Whispers actually do come and corner them while Daryl is taking Negan back to Alexandria, right? And again, still Daryl does not believe Negan, and these Whispers actually do deem Negan to be the new Alpha, and Negan puts up an act that he is their new Alpha, he's their new leader, and he makes it seem like that he's about to kill Daryl, but instead of directing the shot at Daryl, he directs the shot at the Whispers, and then Daryl and Negan actually do end up working together to kill those Whispers. And this moment is one of the highlights of the season, right? Just seeing Negan and Daryl working together, and also Negan acting like how he did in season 7 and season 8 is just amazing to see.
Tommy. Oh.
Then after this moment, Daryl actually does end up believing Negan, because Negan actually did have a full shot at Daryl. He had the full opportunity to become like the new Alpha, and also he got the opportunity to take out Daryl, but he didn't choose to do that. He chose to help out Daryl because, again, he's redeemed, right? He's not putting up any sort of act. This is how Negan actually is, and because of this, Daryl does end up believing him, and we get like this really nice scene of Daryl and Negan just sitting and talking, and Negan explaining that when they actually did call me their new Alpha, when I felt like I was in charge there, it felt good, and, you know, he just chose not to kill Daryl. And of course Daryl knew that, yeah, I know that did feel good for Negan, but again, he had the choice to kill me, where he didn't. And this is where Daryl does end up, you know, softening up to Negan, right? These two kind of start having an understanding and kind of a respect for each other at this moment. And now when everyone actually does regroup in the watchtower, we get this scene of Negan and Lydia, and, you know, she's just crying, and again, she's trying to show that she doesn't care about Alpha's death, but Negan is actually comforting her in that moment, which is a very nice moment to see, and it does show that, you know, even Negan did care about Alpha as well. And he does tell Lydia this as well, that, like, you know, I did care about your mother, and he did have to kill her. And, you know, just scenes like this with Negan in them, it shows how much he changed as a character. How much did he develop as a character? At first, he was just a man that didn't care about killing whatsoever, to a compassionate man who likes comforting people, especially children, right? And he understands, like, you know, their pain, for example, with Judith, and also with Lydia as well. And then, like, you know, like, after the scene right here, like, Negan actually does give Lydia Alpha's mask, and he gives her the full opportunity to just run away and to save her own life. So Negan did sacrifice his own means of escape with Alpha's mask to actually blend in with the walkers and to actually get out, because even he did learn how to actually hoard walkers like how the Whisperers do. And when Lydia actually does leave, Negan and Daryl, they get this very, very cool moment where they're working together again against Beta, and Negan actually does end up coming out himself behind everyone, and he wants to take out Beta himself, and he's willing to sacrifice his own life, because again, if you look at Beta compared to Negan, it looks like that Negan's gonna die in that moment, but Daryl comes on time and he actually does save Negan's life, how Negan saved Daryl's life before. And it's just really cool to see, because like, again, they don't necessarily like each other, but they're willing to help out each other, and they do respect each other, especially Daryl, right? Because Daryl at this moment, he does have a certain amount of respect for Negan. And now let's skip forward to the finale of season 10, and in my opinion, this is one of the best episodes in The Walking Dead in general, and that episode is Here's Negan. And now, in this episode, Carol actually does take Negan to a cabin, because Maggie actually did come back, and there's a risk that Negan might die, Maggie might actually kill Negan. So then Carol takes Negan back to a cabin where he could live alone, and she gives him supplies and stuff like that. And this whole episode is very emotional, and I actually did break down this episode in the start of this video, which actually does show Negan's backstory. And the parts I want to focus on are the scenes that are in the present. And first of all, we get a scene where Negan is talking to his old self, right? That is season 7 Negan, and Negan's just sitting in front of a fireplace, and then he hears a voice in his head, and that is his previous self, right? That is season 7 Negan talking to him, and he's taunting him and stuff like that, and it does show that Negan hates that side of him, because he regrets the stuff that he does, right? And he's trying his best to redeem himself, and it's just that this voice in the back of his head is keep on bothering him, and he ends up throwing the glass at the chair where season 7 Negan was sitting at. And again, it shows that even though Negan did like that being part of the Whisperers, and he liked that little moment of being in charge of the Whisperers being called the new Alpha, he still does regret a lot of the things that he did as a savior. And now at the end of this episode, Negan is looking for his bat, Lucille, and he's just thinking about his past and stuff like that, and then he figures out that Lucille could be buried where I had my last standoff with Rick, and that's where Lucille is actually buried. And probably after the events of season 8, Rick or Michonne probably went back and they buried Lucille there to put Negan to rest, right? To technically kill Negan and what he stood for without killing the actual person. And when Negan actually does end up finding Lucille, it's a very emotional moment, and he comes back to the cabin and he's just talking to the bat, but he's not directly talking to the bat, he's talking to his wife Lucille, right? And he's saying that how he's sorry for just screwing around with her, he's sorry for everything he's done, and he's sorry for walking away and not putting her down, and he's sorry for actually naming a bat after her. And it's a very emotional moment, just with the music and just Jeffrey Dean Morgan's performance in general. This is easily the most emotional Walking Dead episode, and this is one of the best episodes, and they did this so well. And this episode in general should make the viewer look at Negan in a different light. If the previous points that I pointed out did not redeem Negan for you, this definitely should, right? Because this shows another side of Negan, right? And this side of Negan we have been seeing here and there, but they dedicated a full episode to it, and it's just very nice to see this other emotional side of Negan where he regrets everything and he's sorry about everything and he's actually crying. Then in this episode, Negan actually burns Lucille the bat, and this is his way to put Lucille, his wife, to rest. And it's very nice to see that Negan is finally moving on from all of that, because having the bat around always reminded him of his wife, and of course he was keep on calling it Lucille. And this episode shows that Negan finally put it to rest, and this is basically putting his past to rest as well, and he knows that he has to move on someday, and this is his way of putting his wife to rest, like how he wasn't able to do back in the start of the apocalypse. And now with season 11 of The Walking Dead being so long, I just wanted to go over some moments which I thought were important for Negan's character. And the first moment I want to talk about is when Negan is actually helping out the group to go back to Maggie's old community. And over here we do see that, you know, like the group still doesn't trust Negan. They still do treat him like crap, and he's being pushed around everywhere. And, you know, Maggie did threaten to kill Negan, and Negan took that opportunity to actually, like, you know, leave behind Maggie in the subway system. And, you know, everyone is blaming Negan in this moment, but in my opinion, like, Maggie was basically asking for it, right? Because Negan is doing everything that he could to help out, and he's trying to root for his case, and no one is believing him, except everyone's actually, you know, treating him like total crap. So, you know, in my opinion, Negan is in the right here when he actually left behind Maggie, and he did prove his point, saying that, like, you know, she did threaten to kill me, and, you know, like, why should I even be expected to save her? Because if I save her, she's probably going to shoot me right on the spot. But I want to point out here that they took Negan because he knew the route, and also they knew his mentality. And Negan, this whole time, he's been warning the group that, you know, these are all red flags, right? For example, when they went on the road where the Reapers actually did corner them, Negan was warning them all the way through, and nobody was listening to him, which actually got them into the situation of being separated by the Reapers. And now the other moment I want to talk about is when Negan is actually training Maggie to hoard walkers. We see a moment here where Negan and Maggie actually do end up kind of respecting each other. I mean, not fully, because of course Maggie is still holding the grudge of Negan killing Glenn. But, you know, Maggie does ask Negan if he were to go back to the events of season 7, would he have done stuff differently? And Negan, in this moment, he says that if he had the chance, he would have killed every single one of them. And, you know, like, after the finale of season 10 and after everything that Negan has done, it seems kind of out of character for him to say that. But, you know, if you look at it in his perspective, he kind of makes sense. It's because, like, you know, he lost his power because of Rick's group, and if he killed all of them, he might have still had his power. So, like, of course, he doesn't want to do the stuff that he did before, right? He regrets doing all those stuff. But again, like, you know, you compare being the leader of a huge community or, like, being jailed for, like, years. So, like, you know, you could choose there. So, you know, Negan's opinion there and Negan's whole stance there does make sense, in my opinion. And the other moment I want to talk about is actually when Negan joins a new group called the River Band. And in this group, he actually is a very well-respected member and everyone trusts him, which is a huge change from before, right? And he prefers living here because of his new wife, Annie. And it shows here that Negan actually did move on and he actually did end up marrying a new woman. And Maggie does try to, you know, convince Annie that, oh yeah, he's not good and, you know, he's not trustworthy. But Annie knows everything that Negan did, and she still chooses to, like, you know, just look the other way because everybody has done horrible things in the apocalypse. So Negan is no different. And in this episode here, we do see when the Commonwealth soldiers are actually looking for the members of the River Band and also Aaron and Gabriel, Negan and Herschel do have a talk, and Herschel is pointing his gun at Negan, and he looks like he's about to kill Negan here, but Negan talks him out of it, and he's like, I know you want to pull the trigger, and, you know, you're free to do so, but everybody else here will be hurt. And, you know, this is where Negan shows a lot of leadership, right? This is different than when he was the leader of the Saviors. He actually wants to save everybody, and he wants to protect Herschel, and also he actually does end up saving Herschel's life from the Commonwealth soldiers. So again, Negan is willing to do the right thing here to protect everybody. And with Herschel and Negan talking here, Herschel does say that you're the one that killed my dad, and he does admit it. He's not hiding that fact. He's like, I've done horrible things in the past, and I'm sorry for killing your dad. And Negan finally found the time and, you know, the moment to actually apologize to Herschel here, which actually caused him to calm down. And we see here that Negan actually does start crying. And, you know, again, it shows, like how it did before and a lot of other moments, that Negan truly does regret the stuff that he did. And now another moment I want to talk about is actually near the end of season 11. And this is where Negan, Annie, Ezekiel, and the rest of the group are actually captured by the Commonwealth soldiers and they're forced into work camps. And of course, this is after Negan actually did infiltrate the Commonwealth. to actually save everybody else, but he didn't get the chance to do so, and he ended up in these work camps. And when they actually go into these work camps, Negan does try his best to actually rebel and to fight against the Commonwealth soldiers, but he found no success, and he found a way to actually frame himself into, like, you know, coming up with the rebellion and to coming up with a plan to actually take them over, which is actually death, right? Like, the consequence of rebelling is actually execution, right? And of course, Negan actually does come up with an agreement with the main head of the soldiers, right? And he basically throws himself, right? He basically sacrifices his own life for Annie, his unborn child, for Ezekiel, for everybody else. And we get this full mirroring of the lineup scene, right? And Negan is on his knees, and just the Commonwealth soldiers are pointing their guns at him and Annie. And of course, Negan does say that, you know, we came to an agreement that it was only going to be me that got shot, and you brought my wife into this as well. And in this moment, Ezekiel actually does, you know, stand in front of Negan and Annie, and also the rest of the group does follow, and the Commonwealth soldiers just hold their fire. And here, like, it's just a full mirroring of the lineup scene, and this is a totally different outcome of that. Instead of Negan dying, like, Ezekiel and the people that he actually oppressed, like, all those years back, actually do save his life. And here is the moment that Negan is fully redeemed. And of course, I've said this a lot of times in a lot of other moments in this video, that, you know, Negan is redeemed here, Negan is redeemed there. But, you know, you look at anybody else in the Walking Dead community, and just people that watch this show and love this show, and people that don't even like Negan all that much, everybody agrees that this moment right here is where Negan was redeemed, and he actually knew what it felt like to be lined up at the dead of night and just, like, you know, having your life flash before your eyes. And he felt when Maggie felt when Negan actually did kill Glenn, when they actually put Annie right there beside him. And now let's actually skip towards the finale of season 11. And in the finale of season 11, like, Negan and Maggie do get a heart-to-heart talk in, like, before they actually aim their shot at Pamela, right? And Negan actually does say that, you know, I don't want you to carry that burden, I don't want you to kill Pamela, like, you know, I should do it, right? Because again, he feels guilty for everything he does. And after the whole battle against the Commonwealth is over, the final scenes of Negan in The Walking Dead in general is him and Maggie actually talking. And, you know, Negan actually does have a full apology here, right? Negan is just crying his eyes out, and he's like, I'm so sorry, and I actually do know what you felt in that moment when me and Annie were down on our knees. I knew what you felt, and, you know, I'm just extremely sorry about that, and I'm very, very guilty about that. And Maggie actually does find it in her heart to not fully forgive Negan, but she does say that you and Annie do have a spot in the Commonwealth, and you guys could actually, you know, live in normal houses, and you guys are part of us now. And, you know, that is the most that Negan could get, right? And realistically, that is the most that Negan could get. And also, the final scenes of Negan, the very final scene of Negan in The Walking Dead in general, is him nodding at Daryl and Daryl nodding back, which does show a mutual respect, and Daryl fully respects Negan for everything he's done for the group, from, like, you know, saving Judith, from killing Alpha, from, like, you know, the whole Commonwealth arc in general, right? You know, just helping everybody out, and, you know, just infiltrating the Commonwealth, risking his own life to actually save everybody else. Negan has done so much in the Walking Dead main show, and he deserves to be redeemed. He deserves to be looked at in a different light, in a better light by everybody, and this nod from Daryl is proof of that. And now I'm just going to be touching upon Dead City, and that's because this video is already very lengthy and I don't want to make it even more lengthy, so I'll just be touching upon just like some moments of Dead City which I thought were important. And the first thing I want to talk about was Negan's relationship with Ginny, and here we do see that Negan is taking care of Ginny, right? And like that, this is after Annie and his child actually disappeared, so Negan does end up taking care of Ginny. And we do see Negan actually taking up that father-like role, right? Kind of like how Joel is to Ellie. this is how Negan is to Ginny, and it's just very nice to see, you know, Negan being so patient and being so kind with Ginny as well. But in Dead City, we do see Negan kind of going back to his old self, right? He's making jokes and he's killing people without a second thought, but only the people that need to be killed. And of course, like, you know, the ending of season 11 is thrown out the window when Maggie is trying to kill Negan again. But when Negan and Maggie actually do track down Herschel, because Herschel is actually taken by the Croat, and the Croat was a former savior, like how I actually mentioned earlier on in this video. And the Croat is a psychopath, right? And he is a part of Negan's past that which still haunts him till this day. And the Croat is using the old savior tactics by whistling and, like, you know, cornering people and stuff like that. And, like, you know, the Croat is a big, like, you know, reminder to Negan of what he used to be, and this shows that Negan's past is still never going to leave him alone. But then at the end of Dead City, after Negan and Maggie have their whole fight, you know, like, Negan actually does give himself up to the Croat and the Barazzi to actually get back Herschel, and they trade spots, right? So Negan is willing to actually give himself up for Herschel to come back to Maggie, and that's what they do, and that is the end of Negan's story so far. But in my opinion, like, you know, I count The Walking Dead season 11 the true end for Negan's character, is because the whole character arc that was going up from season, like, you know, 9 all the way up to season 11, that seemed more coherent. And then with the time jump of Dead City, it changed Negan's character pretty drastically. So yeah, that's it for today's video. I would like to ask you all to like, share, and subscribe. And again, thank you guys so much for the growth. Thank you guys so much for the support. I really appreciate it. And thank you guys for actually staying until the end of this video. I really appreciate it, and this is my longest video yet. It took me about a week and a half to make this video for the recording and for the editing, and it was a lot of work. So, you know, if you guys like the video, please like, share, and subscribe, and comment down what are your guys' thoughts on Negan, because Negan is my favorite Walking Dead character, and, you know, just going over his story and going over his life was very fun. And, you know, this video is not scripted, so if I missed a lot of stuff here and there, or if I got some stuff wrong here and there, and that's mainly because I'm talking off the top of my head, and, you know, this video is without a script. So, you know, I just hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I know that I enjoyed making this video. So yeah, again, thank you all so much for watching.